You're tuned in to RX Radio.
Direction? Doing one thing really good and then diversifying. So kind of
Yeah, I just think there was a saying that went around that specialization is for insects. Basically, like, people should be generalists first, and I think that's wrong. Like, because we've talked about this in certain contexts before, but I think you should learn how to go a mile deep before you go a mile wide.
I don't know if I agree.
Really? Because your whole life is dedicated to my premise, and not yours.
But
if I were you, I would probably agree with you.
Yes, if you were me, you would agree with you. But so I agree with you to an extent. Is that I think you need to figure out what the fuck you're good at before you can do that, right? And that's the generalist part of it. Is that you have to, like, if I didn't have sports or like gym class in high school, I would have never known that it's a lot cooler to like lift weights than read books.
Right, but okay, all right. So let's talk to an audience that assume has their GED. Let's do that. This is not RX Radio. But as you were saying that, I think you make a good point, and I think it's one of the things that we see in our industry is, I went through a 4-year undergrad, then we went to grad school, and I think the institutionalization of signing up for shit that sucks is what allows you to fall seamlessly into more specificity, because the novelty and the breadth of stuff that's out there is built into even the most basic bachelor's program, right? So if we're talking, the GED might be like a lesser degree, obviously, than that, but if you went to university, and that's, we're going to spin this to talk about fitness, and some of the smartest coaches I know, you had to burn down the grade school to get them out.
Right.
But I think that's exposure that a lot of people who go a different route into fitness, then they don't get. And I'm not saying one way is right or wrong. I'm just saying that is an undeniable fact of landing in a specialist position. Is you're oftentimes exposed to things that, in a general sense, you're exposed to that mile of breadth, and then you choose to go a mile deep on something.
Right.
So I think that's, with you going to King's and getting your undergrad, train King's?
King's, yeah.
So going to undergrad and then doing that, you're like, okay, this is where I want to go a mile deep. But, like, I'm sure you had English something or other, some politics class, some sort of, I don't know, creative writing shit or whatever the fuck.
Right.
And then you're like, oh, fuck all that noise. I'm going to go do this thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's exactly how it was. And, like, my undergrad was a liberal arts degree, it's called. So it's basically you get exposed to all that. Like, if you were an art major, you still have to take an accounting class. Like, you have to take everything before you can actually declare your major and go and do whatever that is.
So it gives you a base.
Exactly. So you get exposed to all these different disciplines and all these different kind of thought processes before you dive in and go deep on one. And something that I've found, or that I've kind of noticed, especially in going to chiropractic school, is that people that go to specialize later in life, they seem more dedicated and more focused in what they're doing, right? Because, I think the same for you and I, is because we're the same age and we hit these landmarks at the same time, but I went right from high school to undergrad to graduate school, right? And we got a doctorate at 25 years old. So at that, I feel fortunate enough that I identified all the shit I didn't want to do early on, because I had exposure to those types of things. Like, I'm not going to read books. I'm not going to write papers. I'm going to learn about the human body, and I'm going to apply it to exercise. And I'm going to find a way to make money while I do that. That was pretty much it. And I figured that out probably before I left high school. I just didn't know exactly how I was going to do it, right? I still don't really know how, but it seems to be working. Yeah, exactly. But what I've noticed is that a lot of people that, even like if we look at our chiropractic school class, like our class, there's a whole variety of people in there, different disciplines, different backgrounds, different ages. Some of the people that I think seem the most focused and dedicated to what they were learning in that specific time were some of the people that had life experience. Like, maybe they were a plumber, or maybe they did manual labor, or maybe they were, a personal trainer. They did these different things, and then they came in knowing, like, okay, I've done these different things. I have assessed the situation, and this is the thing that I want to dedicate myself to. This is what I want to spend my time and go really deep on that. And I feel like that's probably different for different people, and it probably happens in different ways, or like there's different kind of things that happen in their life that push them that way. And I think it just happened very early on for me, is like understanding how much I liked working out and like the everything that came with that. So I just dove in deep on that probably in high school. Like we talk about this all the time, and like Muscle and Fitness magazine, or like, Men's Health, or like whatever the magazines were back in the day. That was like my sources of research for this stuff, because that's like where you could get the newest information. Some of the blogs online, like bodybuilding.com, stuff like that, that helped you go deeper on these things. But I think some people, they need to actually fail in other areas before they could find out what the direction is, the right direction for them.
So they need to cast the net wider to then understand what they don't like, to then kind of specialize and hone in, is what we're saying.
Yeah.
Which is exactly the opposite to what you're saying.
Because I think one thing that you said was, like, you need to find something you're good at. And I don't think that's the whole story, right? I forget what it's called. I think it's like some Japanese term. That's like the 3 things you need to be successful. It's like, one is like, you have to like something, be passionate, but also be able to be like make money from it.
Yeah.
So I think it's more like less so doing like, I'm just gonna do whatever the fuck I want. It's like, well, no, or things you're good at. Like, I know plenty of people that are good at shit that don't do it. Right. And it's oftentimes the case when they're really good at it and it comes easy to them that they don't want to do it. Right. Like, I think of this from like an athletics perspective, where you see people who are like, you are so good. How come you don't want to practice? Like, say the first thing again. You're so good. Oh, right. Oh, okay. I get it.
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, like, obviously went to the same school. I question people who, when they chose to go to our school and they've done a lot of life experience before, I try and zoom out to the entirety of their life and think, will they even do this thing forever?
Right.
Will this just be another thing that they try? And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think my thought, and obviously, like, I think I'm biased in a way that I think you should be biased, because I feel like we're the exact same, is there's skills that you learn on your way down that you can take across. But there's not skills that you learn going across that you can take down. Right? Levels of overcoming problems at are intermediate, novice, and advanced. Advanced transfers over to advanced in other disciplines, even when the core of that discipline is distinctly or drastically different, where it's like bouncing around surface level shit is super easy.
So I absolutely agree with that statement. And something that comes to mind is how this stuff does laterally apply is someone that's gone deep in one area can laterally apply the process of going deep in another area.
Yes.
Like when we were in Australia, Michael Liu, is that correct?
Yeah.
He's an accountant. Dude, he's
Shows up
so
in the
smart.
femur, the smartest.
He's so fucking smart.
You don't follow him.
And he's right?
Dude.
He's so smart.
So well
and he
spoken.
went deep on, like, he had a professional career. Was he an accountant?
Of course he was an accountant.
Something like that?
Yeah, it was accountant, yeah.
And he went deep on that. He was probably very successful because he has all the qualities and traits that a successful person would have. And he decided, fuck this, I don't want to do this. Like, I like this other thing. And now he's taking the steps. He's applying that process of going deep laterally to the fitness industry now.
And he's crushing it.
Yeah.
Like, crushing it.
Now, my thing is, knowing a little bit about Michael and his background, he probably went deep on accounting from a very young age. He probably specialized in that. And I think learning the skills to overcome more advanced problems only happens exposures at increased exposures to the problem that you have or to the discipline you're trying to learn. Mm-hmm. The quicker you can get that out of the way, I think that's more important long term than running into a bunch of shit you don't like. Because the problem is, in a thing that you've decided that you like, even for a transient period of time, you will ultimately run into things that make you not like that thing.
Yeah.
So it's going to push you down or left or right, rather than just moving left or right, just bouncing around things. Because you're not going to learn every time I go deeper into a problem, it is another test of like, do you really want to be in this lane? Because this is a dumb problem. Because and this happens to people all the time. You see people who are like, we'll bring it to fitness, who are like personal trainers who do well, and then they try and move to business owners. And they own their own gym. One of my close friends in the world opened up 2 gyms in Windsor and then sold them. It's like, I fucking hate owning a gym. Mm-hmm. But it was the natural progression of going down. And he reached a point where he's like, he was, I don't know, 50 hours a week cash, making, I don't know, probably a couple $100,000 a year. No overhead. He's like, well, what do I do now? And then it was like, well, you leave your commercial setting and then you open your own thing. And he did that. And he realized that, well, I don't want to do that anymore. So rather than jumping left or right, he just ascended back up to the level of problem that he was content solving, and then he just stayed there. Yeah. Right? But I just think when people, and because we're having 2 conversations. We're having like conversation about, in general, people finding fitness. And then I think there's another conversation we're going to lean into, which is the mediums by which people try and grow their presence in the fitness industry. Because we're talking about like maybe you like economics, maybe you like social studies, maybe you like politics.
Yeah.
And then it's like maybe you shouldn't do a podcast right away.
Yeah.
Maybe you shouldn't start a YouTube thing right away. Like so there's like macro and a micro, right? So I think at a macro level, if you're listening to this, probably you've made that choice that fitness is something you want to go deep on. But from a micro level, like your day-to-day operations, I think it's so overwhelming to run a business in general, but with the fitness industry being so tied to the prevailing trade winds of social media and trends in the industry, and who knows, maybe all industries are like this, and we don't have the same level of exposure to them. Mm-hmm. But I see people out of the gate who have picked this specialization out of the plethora of specializations to pick. Now all of a sudden trying to go very, very general again. Yeah. Right? Like, we started your Instagram account in like 11 days grew to 10,000 followers way back into, because you were just like, oh, I'm just going to focus on this.
Yeah.
Right, I'm just going to go deep on this. Right? So it's like however you've chosen to get into fitness or whatever is the thing that you choose, that's great. But like now I think the idea of being a generalist is, especially now, bad. Like we sat down on Chat GPT the other day and we started prompting it with some shit. And I immediately went, oh, fuck yeah. Because the marketplace for original thought now is that much more valuable. And that hitting original thought is like hitting water, like the what's it called? Like the water table? Like when you dig, you hit. So in geology, like there's a point where depending on where you are at the earth, the water table is essentially how far under the ground you need to dig before you hit water, right? So original thought to me is like the water table. So, different places are going to have different depths where you hit water. Some places that are like super rich, you go to like Ireland or some shit, I'm sure you dig like 1 inch under the ground, there's fucking water. That's why the whole place is green. But you go into the desert, you'll be digging for a long ass time.
Right.
And so I think original thought is the water table. And I think now all Chat GPT did was took a lot of people and it got them above the water table, which is like good for relaying just general basic information, but original thought, that's gold now. Because we went on that thing and dude, it was terrifying. Like if you know how to prompt it well, it was spitting out articles and book chapters and I was like, what the fuck is this? So I think now is the time to specialize more than any other because AI is on the leading edge of catching that lagging tailwind of people who are generalists.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. It's like an Uber driver dropping you off in like a shopping complex.
Don't start with Uber drivers.
AI is going to get you close, right? Uber driver is going to get you close. But to actually find your destination, you're going to have to go a little bit deeper than that. Like you're going to have to be able to use your senses and understand like sense of direction and know where you're going. And it sounds like in a similar way what you're saying is that original thought is that thing that it's going to set you apart from all the AI generated shit, which is so accessible, which is so easy, but it's very general, right?
With that though, like ChatGPT is going to give people like this facade of like they know things until you get in front of them and you start having a conversation and you realize they don't know what they're talking about. They just know how to prompt whatever ChatGPT was. And then we see that in the fitness industry, we see that online. It's like everyone's throwing out stuff that they've learned and they literally copy and paste it. But then you have a conversation with them and they don't know what the fuck's going on. There's no that original thought, exactly what you're saying. And I think that's going to now hopefully be able to expose that even more in those people who can think for themselves and actually have a credible source of information there. They should just charge more now and actually like start leveling it up and create that divide between everyone even more in from that side, I guess.
Yeah, that kind of it depends on the context too, or the medium, I guess, right? Is ChatGPT like AI generated text might be good for a website. It might be good for a social media post.
Yeah.
But it's not going to work on a podcast, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have the whereabouts to understand those thoughts and be able to prompt that and write that on your own, and you can just prompt a machine to do it, then you're not going to be able to have an hour-long conversation about these topics, right? It's going to get exposed at some point that, the different mediums are going to allow for further context.
Yeah.
So if you don't have further context, then you're not going to be able to elaborate on that.
I think the biggest flex, and it's great, but also scary that we're old enough to see this come full circle, is the biggest flex now is working in person.
Yeah.
That to me is like, I mean, look across the board. What's her name? Just won the at Wadapalooza, the Masters.
Taya.
Taya.
Yeah.
Right. I've watched you coach her for years.
Yeah.
And she's won a bunch of shit. She's done like Masters, CrossFit Games. She just did Wadapalooza.
Yep.
I've seen you train her in person in the back of Sundown.
Yep.
I've seen you train world champion WBFF pros, and like that's the biggest flex. Like, so don't come at me with your fucking text on tile Instagram posts with your hot takes, because the hottest take in fitness will always be working in person.
100%.
Yeah.
And while we're at it, you can't be a strength coach on Instagram, so go fist yourself.
Yeah. No, but dude, you're 100% right. Then I think that's where that specialization comes in. It's like you only understand what to specialize in when you've worked in person with people. I think like that's part of the disconnect that I'm starting to see in the industry. Is everyone comes out, they do their Cert 3, 4, whatever it is. It's like they do maybe, I don't know, fucking a couple months in the gym. They're like, I'm going to go and do online coaching because I can travel around and do these all glamorous things. And they start trying to online coach and they realize like they don't know what they're doing. They don't know who they're actually supposed to be working with. Mm-hmm. And then they just listen to every Tom, Dick, and Harry who's like, well, you need to get more information out there and you need to start a podcast and you need to start a blog and you need to start a fucking this. And because more eyes on you is good. It's like, well, more eyes on you when you're doing a really shitty job is probably not good. It's like just get really good at getting results with one population or whatever it is that you like, and most people will come to you because of that, I think.
And I think start off, you said one population, I think just start off with one person.
Yeah.
Right? And usually the easiest one for that to be is yourself.
Self.
Yeah, like, and it doesn't have to be much more. Like, here's an example. Charlie Johnson is a friend of mine from Dubai. Oh, he's from the UK, but I met him in Dubai more formally. And he's only been in health and fitness as a profession for 3 years. I think he has 2 8-figure businesses. Yeah. Like legitimate, and
Sick.
I'm not talking like, come join my 8-figure blah, blah, blah. Like, no. Like, I've seen the Stripe accounts. Like, I know his day-to-day operations. He owns 2 8-figure businesses.
Runs a pretty good online coaching business.
Yeah, and he has this
really
call
good.
center in fucking Mexico somehow
Yeah.
as a Brit who lives in Dubai. But because before that, he was in real estate development. So he just went all in on that, and then it's like his ability to problem solve from real estate development to fitness is like, you're they're not going to be the same problems, but they're going to be the same level of complexity, the same level of like relative discomfort to your current knowledge level and ability to apply. And if you just have like attrition, right, like you just don't give up and move to another thing, which is like, he has that at a macro level. Yeah. Clearly, like, he did that in an industry that's also very competitive, that can be very lucrative, that can be very time-consuming, and a lot of people are unsuccessful in real estate. Right? The number of people with a real estate license is insane. But if you sell one house a year, especially around here, you can make fucking $100,000, and then you're like, all right, well, I sold one house this year, and I made a 6-figure salary. It's like, okay, I have 15 clients and I pay my bills. It's the same thing, but it's always going to be the people who like either they didn't go all in on themselves, right? They didn't go all in, and I don't want to like bring school into it, but it is just a thing that's going to pose you with problems, a ton of problems that you just have to get over and just deal with, right? Or so whether it's career-wise, whether it's your own training, all of these are just signals of your ability to overcome problems at increasing levels of complexity, right? Like getting someone who's, 20 pounds overweight to lose 5 pounds is not hard, right? No. Getting someone who's, 8% body fat to 6% body fat in the last 2 weeks, it takes a little bit more than that, but you can't have the second one without having the first one, right? Like there's a prerequisite system, and like the prerequisite is just its depth of thought, right? And it's when you hit that depth of thought, you're going to come up with original ideas. You're going to dig to the water table that springs original thought, right? And people never hit it. People die. People live their whole lives, do their whole career, and don't think past that point where original thought springs through. And I think that is the biggest disservice you could, because I sit around you guys all day whenever you're here, and on all day when you're not, just over Zoom calls, and you literally can just see like wheels turning. And then you can see where you hit that spring, and the thought pops into your head, and it's just like, yeah, but nothing is original when you start. Yeah. It might be new to you, right? But it's not going to be new to the industry. You're just going to be like, oh, okay, yeah, no, we've been saying this for 100. Really? Wow. It's like, okay, but stick at it long enough, then you'll actually, you'll sharpen your tools to the point where you can dig to that point where it's like, never really thought of it that way. No one's ever thought of it that way. You need to think longer than other people. I don't know. It's frustrating because it is hard to see. Like, you want these kids to be successful, but they just see the end, and it's so fucking stereotypical. I almost hate even saying it because it's like I don't want to say shit that's already been said before. Yeah. But it's like there's like a playbook out there, and we're a purveyor of this playbook. But like there's an evolution of it. I was thinking about programming the other day, and it's funny how like you watch someone write a new program for a client, and you watch that same thought process iterate on their business. It's like we've been programming together for like 2 or 3 months, and it's just an evolution of like, hey, this dumbbell row is like, I don't know, it's the heaviest one we have, and I'm pulling it for 12 to 15. It's like, all right, we'll put another exercise in front of it. My shoulder's really hurting. It's like, okay, we'll do an overhead exercise before. And then it's like, all right, well, it's still like, all right, we'll do a barbell movement before that. So like in 3 months, our program has just evolved to push this thing that we're good at further down the line. So by the time we get to it, we're fatigued. So it's not like every 4 weeks, it's like, okay, this 4 weeks we're going to play exercise bingo and go this one, and this one for this reps, this, that. It's like, no, okay, we're just like, it's an evolution, right? And it's the same thing with people's businesses. It's like they go, okay, I'm going to do the TikTok thing now. And then, the text on screen shit, and I'll make sure there's an emoji on every fucking line. I'm like, dude, do you have a bicep vein? No? Okay, then do that. Do that. Work really hard on getting a bicep vein that's visible through a T-shirt for like 6 months. And if you can do that, then you'll have learned skills where TikTok is easy.
Yeah, I like that comparison to programming because effective programming is exactly that. It doesn't change. It's largely the same shit over and over and over again, right? If you want to have progress in anything, you need to get really good at doing the basics really well. And then once you do that, you solve problems along the way. Is that, okay, I don't have a bicep vein. I should probably bend my elbow more. Okay, I'm going to bend my elbow more. It doesn't need to be these big, sexy, very different things. It's just finding what's effective and then minimum effective dose too. Is that you don't need to be doing a lot. You need to make progress and do just as much as necessary to make progress. So that's programming, that's business, that's anything that you're doing in life. It doesn't have to be these big changes. It just has to be taking action and making sure that you're assessing if that action is getting you closer or further from your goal.
I think one of those annoying trends in fitness is people who go against the idea of, I don't want to say specificity, but who go against the idea that like you have to do like, and I'm not even going to call it the boring things because I find it interesting, but like personal trainer, coaches, mentor people who are like, for general population people, you don't have to get them to do the same thing every time. And it's like, look, if someone's paying me to get a job done quickly, I'm going to use the best tool for the job.
Right.
And if these are the best tools that by someone's designation they deem boring, maybe you're boring. I've gotten people who don't like exercise to come in day and because you can explain it to them in a way where if they're excited about the end result, then the exercise as a vehicle of the most expedient way to get to that end result then becomes exciting.
Right.
And it's your goal to get them excited about the end result, right? And remind them of that. So it's like I hate these people who come on and post about, or honestly shit post about trainers who advocate for doing these core movements that are most effective. And it's like, just throw stuff and lunge and do all. It's like, no, there has to be some thought. Otherwise, you're not going to get there as fast as you can. And that's your job, right? To beat a natural history, if you will. So whenever I see that condemnation towards people who, use these effective tools, all I see is someone who's not good at interpersonal skills, who's not good at like relating to people, who doesn't have an ability to go deep or wide, and they just kind of come in and it's like, yeah. So like, how are the kids? It's like, dude, you're gonna have to be a little bit. There's got to be a little bit more than that, right? To keep their interest. So like, the time they come in is barely even about the work that they do. They just enjoy coming to talk to you. Yeah. So whenever there's people who are like, yo, like you don't have to have your clients do the same thing. It's like, why would I have them do the ineffective stuff?
Yeah.
Right. I'm gonna have them do the effective stuff, and then I'm gonna have some life experience and some personality, and I'm going to give a shit about them, and I'm going to ask them a bunch of questions, and they're going to enjoy their time, and then they're going to come back and keep doing it, and they're going to get their results quicker.
Yeah.
It's such a weird trend that people are like calling out people who are like, hey, I just kind of do the same shit with my clients all the time. Like, bro, doesn't that be boring, man? Like, your clients aren't robots. It's like, dude, no one likes you. That's your problem. No one likes you.
And that's funny. That, to me, sounds like the process of laterally applying the process of going deep is that someone that goes deep, like, you go deep as fuck on biomechanics, right? You also know exactly what plane flies, exactly what route from here to Bangkok.
Yes.
So it's like you go deep on those things because that's your process. That's how your brain works, is you want to know the details. You want to know everything about it. And that's what allows you to have a personality and have conversations that are not just about bicep curls or biomechanics in the gym. It's that you have experience, but you can also laterally apply that deep thought process to these other things that you're passionate about in life. So now you can make this stuff simple. Like you'll say all the time that if it's sophisticated, it should be simple, right? Is that how it goes?
That sounds right.
Okay,
Yeah,
I don't
maybe.
know. I don't know the
Something like
muscle
that.
dog
That's
quotes,
fine.
but it's there's simplicity, there's sophistication, and simplicity.
I like
Yeah,
it.
that's
Something
what
like
it
that.
is.
That's
Better-
what.
Yeah,
better
that's what
than
it
anything
is.
I said.
I don't know.
That's
I don't know.
definitely it. Yeah.
But that's the idea, is that it should be simple. The things that you're doing, it doesn't have to be super complex. If it's too complex, it's probably not the right thing to do, unless it's a very complex problem that you have to solve. But at the same time, you should take that approach to your people skills. It's simple. Just treat them like a fucking human, and they're going to want to come back and build a relationship with them, and they're going to come in because they like you. It doesn't have to be the exercises that are keeping them there, as long as the exercises are effective in getting them progress.
Yeah, and I think understanding that someone who hires you, their general interest is not fitness. Because if it was, they wouldn't be hiring you.
Exactly.
Right? So I've only developed the ability to go lateral because I've gone down.
Yeah.
Right? So like whether it's a plane thing or whether it's every analogy I use to explain the fitness thing, I don't explain the fitness thing with fitness things.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah.
I'll use
Every movie quote possible.
every
to
movie,
create.
right? But or like I'm doing a thing now with like this Boeing documentary.
Of course.
So naturally, right? Because I do spend a lot of time on planes, and I sat next to this pilot, and as he's talking, I'm like, this sounds a lot like center of mass. This sounds a lot like why people can't squat well. He's like, what? He's like, it's fine. But it's like, I know I can't. It's like, have you ever had someone try to define a word by using the word in the definition?
Right.
Dog, what are we doing here? Right? Like, Webster, sort it the fuck out. It's the same thing with fitness people. Like, if you need to, in my opinion, this is why I advocate for specialization, especially now, is like, you need to go down so you can get, I'm not saying hit the bottom. I learn shit every day and by doing stuff. But you need to descend or ascend, depending on how you're looking at it, to a point where you can then go, oh, okay, all right, I know how to explain this to you. You like food. I have 1,000 food analogies. I can do a food analogy. I do one with Chopped all the time, the cooking show Chopped, and I can go airplane, I can go travel, and because it's like I know I can't go fitness, right? I can't use the word onomatopoeia to define the word onomatopoeia. Like I need to have something else. It's like onomatopoeia. It's like when you read a Batman comic book and it says splat, and like the word kind of looks like the image or the thing that's happening. That's what that is. So it's and people like lose that, and I'm going to call it people kind of in our world who have decided to go deep, because they go deep and they think this is the treasure that they found is in the depths of this realm. It's like no. What you found is the skill set to move outward, right? Like, when I hear, and there's some people that I work with that love the technical shit, but more often than not, what I found is not under my feet. Like when I hit a certain depth and understanding, it's not right underneath me where it's like, oh my God, like instantaneous axis of rotation and like, as upward rotation increases and increasing levels of, no. None of that. What you found is, okay, I need to be able to go outside with this now. Like that's the tricky part. But it becomes easy if you've overcome all the hurdles to get to that point. So people get there and they understand all this like jargony language, and they're like, yay, like I've reached this diamond, I'm going to go bring it to the world. It's like, this has no value in the open market, especially a market of people who don't know shit about fitness, and that's why they're paying you. It's like you need to be able to like shape shift this information into different worlds. But it becomes easy if you get there.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck, man. Like the point is, get in shape first.
Yeah.
Right? Go
Get
deep
strong,
on that.
yeah.
I think, get strong, get in shape. Bicep vein should be a prerequisite, right? And then you're client number one. You're patient fucking zero.
Yeah.
Then maybe you might be able to replicate that with someone else. Then replicate it with 5 people, right? Then maybe get a domain name. Do that. Start there. Make your website cool. I started working on my website before I had a business.
Yeah.
Right? Like I wrote a ton of blogs before I wrote blogs before I had a website. That's what started all this. Like I wrote a blog because I was angry about someone's article online, and you couldn't really shit post on Instagram. I didn't even have Instagram. I remember
Facebook was
Facebook
wasn't around.
I had him on the podcast I was on his podcast. He was a chiropractor. He was like into CrossFit. It was like, this is why all athletes should squat different. And it was like the Stu McGill cadaver femur thing. No, it wasn't K-Star. It's a different dude. Ryan DeBell.
Oh,
Ryan DeBell up in like Seattle or something. And he wrote an article. And I was like, that's not true. O-linemen should probably squat like an O-lineman. Now, mind you, O-linemen are probably built a certain structural way, but of like, you're dealing with soccer moms and calling them athletes. Like, you're not protecting the sanctity of the word athlete. Yeah. So I started writing. And then fucking 6 years later, there was a book and there was prescript and there was level 1. But it's like, and all I focused on was like an article that was like, you think you're silly. And this is what I think is right. But it's like, I didn't try and do like, I'm going to turn this into a YouTube video. I'm going to turn this into this. I'm going to turn this into that. I just sat there with my computer for like days and weeks and months and years on end. And then by the time I looked up, I was like, I know how to write books now. Right? It's just like, and it's a lot because I think we were lucky in a sense that we didn't have a lot of exposure. I didn't have an option. I got an Instagram account like maybe a year or two after that. But blinders, like fucking just decrease the amount of noise. You're not missing out. I think that's what people like.
Yeah. I think part of that is like identifying your core competency, right? Is what is the thing that you're actually good at? If you don't identify that, then you can't have direction, right? You're just going off in a direction because you're being pulled somewhere.
Well, the hard part is everyone sucks when they start. And
right. But there's going to be some sort of drive to get better at something, hopefully, or you're just a piece of shit.
Well, isn't that where it comes from? Training. That's the original drive.
Yeah, right. So if that's your core competency is training, then learn how to train really well. Train yourself, like you were saying. Train yourself really well. And then find a population that those concepts apply to, and then start to use that as your population to build a business.
Yeah, well, I mean, we had the conversation yesterday. It was like Olympic lifting for both of us. Not so just like it's a difficult sport, but it created our ability to overcome so many other things in life, because Olympic weightlifting is the most frustrating fucking thing in the world.
Yeah,
because on a Monday, you're amazing, and on Monday night when you come back, everything has gone to shit. And the transferability of being able to show up every session and still do the work, put in the work, fucking do it, it's like, I think that transfers into life, and then transfers into business, and transfers into becoming a better coach, etc. Like, that's it there. And that goes all the way full circle to the original point. It's like, train yourself. Because when you start training yourself and you start hitting plateaus, you start hitting problems, you start solving those problems. And like, that's the first layer of like discomfort. Or when you start going deeper, it's like, how do I now get better at this task? Or how do I overcome this problem? It's like, oh, cool, I figured out for myself. I should be able to then transfer it to someone else, hopefully. And like further down. I think that's how this whole process should start, into then learning how to specialize.
Yeah, I think looking at perspective too, because fitness is generally easy, relative, in my opinion, because obviously like we're good at it, or we have a passion for it, or we've been doing it for a long time, or whatever. But someone who always comes to mind when I think about this is Matt Penny. So like our CTO is one of the smartest people. And I think he is the single smartest person I've ever met in my entire life. Obviously, I know him better than other smart people that I know, so I might just be getting a greater, a greater frequency of his intellect, because we talk to him almost on a daily basis.
Yeah.
But Marshall, I think the plug just died. Gotcha. Oh, we're good. We're back in. We're back in the saddle. Jay Marshall on the ones and twos. DJ Marshall Media holding it down. But I think because he comes from a tech background. Right. So he was like enterprise software engineer at major banks in Canada. Like, he knows that shit. And it's hard to say whether problems, like how things relate in complexity, because complexity is almost like stress. It's all relative. Right? Like some people, like, I don't know, they
handle it well, and some don't.
You drop your fucking scone on the sidewalk in the morning, and you're a fucking blubbering mess, or just you fucking buy another scone or whatever. But then some people take shit in stride really well. So it's hard to, like, with complexity, because it's all relative to intellect. But at the same time, there's an absolute value of things that come out of the problems that you solve. Like we see Matt's ability to solve problems on the technical side, and we're just like, holy shit. But you want to talk about a guy who can so easily change his body composition?
Yeah.
Like Matt will bulk up until like 220 and 230. He's like 6'4". He's a tall dude.
Big dude.
And then he will just get dick skin shredded.
Yeah.
Like, remember Matt before his wedding?
Yeah.
Dude, he like
probably like a
gears
$190
down
or
in the
something.
studio to put on his suit. And like, I'm talking ab veins.
Yeah.
Like runway model shit. And I was just like, what the fuck? And he goes, it's not hard. And I'm like, well, yeah, because I see your day-to-day job. So I think a lot of times when people, and this is a warning sign of specialization in fitness, is like specialization, I think, is like a key that unlocks an ability to like honestly get more out of life. Like, I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't go all in on something, because it teaches you how to go all in on anything, right? Like, I enjoy traveling so much more the more I've gone all in on fitness. Because the more I go all in on fitness, the more people want me to go all over to go up. But like, we're planning a trip to Thailand, and yeah, it's so much more enjoyable. If I'm going to spend 14 hours on a fucking plane, I want to know the difference between a 787 or an A320 Neo. Like, I need, because I'm there and I want to enjoy the whole thing. But I honestly did not start paying attention to that shit until I started to really, really pay attention to the other stuff.
Right.
So it's like, and that's because everywhere you look, there's everything can be infinitely complex. Like, when I was younger, maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, Hayden Bowe used to call me a hipster. And I always like had a negative connotation to that, because it's pretty much just baristas that are hipsters, right?
Yeah.
And Killian.
Yeah.
Right. But you have an appreciation to it. Now, do I want to go into? We have a fucking coffee machine now. One of the espresso-y things.
Yeah, I saw that.
I can't. I told Tess I would, but I can't.
Why?
Because I don't have time. I don't have time. I'm too busy. But I appreciate
the craft.
Shout out the craft, right? But people only appreciate it if in their life they've done what it's taken to get at a level to improve something.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like if you want to get, and this is like we're not being too self-helpy, but if you want to get a lot out of life, pick one thing that you can make a decent living at, that you are interested enough to overcome problems as they become increasingly more complex, and just keep going at that. Because bouncing around cannot be enjoyable until you do that. Because now it's like when I go, traveling is my probably next biggest passion outside of fitness. When I go into that, I take all of the resources and skills and all that into that, and man, traveling is so much more fun now. And because people are like, I don't know how you travel all the time. It's because you don't. I don't want to say you don't travel like I do. You don't put the thought and effort into it, because you don't put the thought in. I'm not saying that this is true always. But it's like when you put the thought and effort into something, you realize there's thought and effort that can be put into everything. Yeah. And then when you do decide, hey, I'm going to move laterally, it's you move with that entire arsenal of ability and passion and dedication with you into those things. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, cool. I didn't know that coffee could be good. I didn't know that food could be. I didn't know that airplanes were different. Fuck.
The reason I don't have an espresso machine is because I'm not ready to go as deep as I'm going to go on espresso once I get an espresso machine.
But the problem is that with the whole concept that we were saying, the depth that we go to on all other topics, imagine if we did go into coffee. Because it would be frightening. There would be 10 different types of fucking coffee machines around you, or coffee beans, and it would be trying to roast this one with infuse it in. That's what's going to happen.
That's going to be me.
Do you know who's like that? To a T? Matt Frazier.
Oh, really?
Yeah? Matt Frazier, if you follow him on Instagram. And obviously, this man's ability to go in on a salt bike for 5 hours or something ridiculous. Or his gun collection.
Yeah,
right?
okay, that I'm down with.
And that's why I'm down with specialization.
Yeah.
Right? I just think it teaches you, it tests you in your ability to stay dedicated to something. Because the more you're in it, the more you're going to be posed with things that are less like the primary thing that you're into, but are more rewarding when you do ultimately solve that problem, right? It brings you back full circle to the thing that you enjoy. And a lot of people don't get tested with that too often. And I don't think there's ever, I don't want to say that, there's never enjoyment, but to take something that you like and it consistently get better over time is Yeah, and you know you're going to run into barriers and like you run into problems where you're just like, okay, that's fine. But you do it long enough and you realize those barriers that like, hey, once I'm on the other side of this, how much cooler is this thing going to be?
Right.
Right? Because it's just, and obviously a biased perspective, but I just think people who go broad and try to generalize, like I'm going to talk about podcasting. In the early days of podcasting, we had zero money.
Yeah.
When we started the podcast, like no money. I remember like trying to pay taxes on the business when we first started with the California Franchise Board, and coming up with $800 was like a struggle. I think I was going on my honeymoon.
Yeah, I met you in the American Barbell? Golds?
It was I think it was still Golds at the time.
Yeah,
and we're like, are we doing this? Because this is all the money we have, and maybe some of it that wasn't even ours.
Yeah,
But when we started the podcast, we didn't have money for, well, fuck, this shit. Like, this is insane to me. But the first barrier that we had in going all in on the podcast was hosting it, right? Like, we didn't have Libsyn where you just hit Lundy hits a button. We didn't have a Lundy. We didn't have a J Marsh. We didn't have Black Magic cameras and the headset mics or sure. We had none of that. And what I remember counting the steps it took me to upload a podcast. It was something like 56 steps.
I remember that, yeah.
Because I had to use a service called FeedBurner, right? That was free, but I had to basically turn our podcast into a blog post on, I might even have been on my website.
I think it was.
It was on the Muscle Doc website, which I started, I was like, hey, I'm going to have a business. I should probably start this before I even had it released, I think. And so it was like an RSS feed was actually a blog under my WordPress site.
Jesus.
And then I had to copy it into this thing called FeedBurner. And then I had to do a bunch of shit. But it was like that right there. It was like, now people can just go on Libsyn. But I think there's like a lot of people, especially with podcasts, and especially to the broader conversation of like, hey, if you've decided on fitness and you want to like explore different medium options, it's like, go all in, right? Like double down. Like if you want to, like Instagram, and you see this with really successful people, like YouTubers are YouTubers. They don't have a great presence. I mean, they have a great presence on Instagram, but their presence is a byproduct of their amazing presence on YouTube, right? If you want to go in on TikTok, go all in on TikTok. But like this idea of like TikTok, Reels, Shorts, Stories, IG, all that, it's like that can come with time. I think we're working on this now with Jay Marsh and Lena, trying to figure out like how to. But it's easier now because we've overcome all the shit and iterations of like, hey, we did podcasting, Instagram, then podcasting, now we're going YouTube. Rather than like, just the spray and pray of doing everything.
Right. Yeah.
That was a good analogy. I'm actually proud of you for that. You know what the backlash that we'll get from, I suppose, a conversation like this is people turn around and like, oh, but I still have to make money. I still have to try and like have a living or something with specialization.
Train in person.
Exactly. I was going to say train in person until that happens.
Yeah.
The other side of it is like, work the fucking problem. It's like, I moved, for example, it's like I moved all my shit off and onto online. And it's like, and I didn't have any money because like I didn't have that many online clients. So do you know what I did? I fucking found another job in the night to give me money to live so that I could continue to like go all in on this thing that I knew that I fucking wanted to do. Now, it's not like that's not the solution to everything because that can kind of distract you. But the idea behind it was like I took it at a time that it gave me enough money to put food in my fucking face. But then at the same time, it didn't take me away from going all in on what the subject is that I was trying to do.
Well, yeah, you had direction of where you wanted to go.
Yeah.
And you had the whereabouts to solve the problem that was keeping you from getting there. It's, I need money to eat. Yeah. I'm going to do something that earns me money while I go this direction and solve these problems of how to build this business.
Yeah, and that was like, I think that's the criticism that these things come up with sometimes. Like, well, I still got to make money, so I'm going to try and do this and diversify. It's like, no, just be really good at the one thing and like keep trying at that one thing. Do other things if you need to keep you alive. But also, like, be smart about those things. Like, I drove for Uber Eats. It was sick.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so I drove for Uber Eats to make money at night because then I could still do client check-ins and shit on my phone while I was delivering food.
Yeah.
That was my thought process. Like, I can still go all in on this thing, make money, and then, like, still be sweet from that side. So it's like, and look what it's done. It's given me the opportunity to go, like, really hard and really deep into this one specialization that I really enjoy. If I didn't do that, I didn't like problem solve in the very beginning, it would have been fucked.
Yeah.
It's like I would have like just tried to go too far wide and I wouldn't enjoy my life.
I think that's what this all comes down to, is learning the skill of problem solving,
So
right?
yeah.
And the more complex the problems are that you can solve, then you've now acquired that skill, and you can do it at a higher frequency with lower fatigue.
Yeah.
And at a higher price.
At a higher price.
More
Absolutely.
expensive problems are more valuable problems to be solved.
Absolutely true.
Like, and recognize that too. I think there's such a. You good?
Yeah, we're doing
We're
well.
good. We're good.
What's happening?
Yeah.
Just got coffee everywhere.
Well, you think with the amount of coffee drinking experience you have that you'd be a pro at this.
Yeah, it's
You
a
get
problem
hold of
I need to
shit.
solve.
Yeah, I'm not paying you to solve that one. Figure it out. But it's like the more complex the problem, but recognize, like, especially now. I just sent out a thing doing a conference in London, and I'm sending an invoice for like a half-day thing for the talk or whatever. And literally, I thought about ChatGPT, and I was like, I'm charging $1,000 more this year.
Yeah.
I'm charging $1,000 more because there's more people who are like, propagating just a bunch of reworded shit. It's like, all right, I think this is like somewhat of an original thought. So it's like recognizing yourself when you've made the investment like that. Like, you come off of, an Uber Eats fucking month 2, 6, whatever, and you come out the other side of it, you go, I am more valuable now.
100%.
I have earned this. And like, I think there's a lot of people who shit talk moonlighting projects. Like, and I'm not saying get a job that is like a 9 to 5. I think being right on the cusp of the lack of comfortability that you can tolerate is exactly where you need to be.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, and that's exactly what I did. It's like I worked during the day and tried to like push the business, and then at fucking 8 o'clock at night, I threw Ziggy in the back of the car.
Yes. Yes.
Ziggy would come with
So
me
good.
and deliver fucking Uber Eats till like 12, 1 o'clock at night, and then I'd come home and then I'd sleep, and then I'd go and train, do my clients, and then after training sessions, I'd do like an Uber Eats for like an hour because I could do clients and shit, deliver food, and then I could go home and I'd do the same thing again. It's like that was what I did because like I knew what I fucking wanted to do. I knew what I was good at. I was going to starve to death.
Yeah.
So I made a fucking plan. Like
Well,
that was it.
That's prescript, right? How long did it take before we actually paid ourselves?
Oh, God. I mean, it wasn't until I was on the road.
5 years?
Yeah, until I was on the road full time.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to
Money.
die.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, but
I was personal training. I was coaching, online coaching, being a
Practicing.
chiropractor, doing prescript things,
And CrossFit, you were still competing. at
CrossFit,
at the time.
weightlifting,
Yeah.
just so that we could get this thing to be viable.
And I think that's like, you want to talk minimum effective dose? I think in the transition period, whatever that looks like, doing the calculation of how much money do I need to survive,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think working on the thing that's not the main thing to that level and that level only.
Right.
A lot of people
Yeah.
are like, oh, I'm in this transition period. I'm like working at a blah, blah, blah firm or whatever. And it's like, that sounds like, I'm making like decent money. It's like, don't.
Yeah.
Don't.
You get comfortable.
Nassim Taleb said the most addictive thing in the world is a monthly paycheck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The salary.
Right? It's like he's also never done black tar heroin, but at the same time, I think the principle still remains. So it's like, figure out what that is. Like, what are your expenses? How much you need to, and then every waking second that's, not, doing the thing to hit that baseline marker where you're still not comfortable, then you should be working on your thing.
100%.
'Cause I think that's a big mistake people make is like, there has to be, and I don't like the word sacrifice, right? Fuad has like a phrase like sacrifice without regret. And I think that's like more to the way I feel about it. 'Cause it's not even a sacrifice. Like it's just necessary.
It's
just
priority.
It's like
working the problem.
Yeah.
That's what it fucking is.
So it's like, do that. That's like, if you're in a transitory phase or transition phase between like, a job you don't like and a job that you want to have, do the thing you don't like to the amount necessary to not die.
Yeah.
And not a second longer. And
Right.
then do the other thing that you enjoy the rest of the time. And then as you become more viable on one side, because like, I mean, I wouldn't recommend, being completely like living in your car or anything like that. But urgency is, I thank God every day for that situation. I thank God every day for that Toyota 4Runner and the parking lots I slept in, because it was like, I got to figure it out real fast, man, because the whole like you're going to die thing, or worse, go back to Windsor, Ontario, which is worse than death. It's like, that's coming real quick. So it's like, don't give yourself that comfortable leash because, like, you'll hang yourself with it.
Yeah.
So I think, back to my original point, I think specialization is good. I think
know.
now more than ever, specialization is going to be the thing. Like, you know, and it is a different conversation depending on someone's background, right? Like, if you didn't go through the liberal arts undergrad background to be like, oh, so this is what politics is like?
Yeah.
This is what art history is like? I fucking hate art history, right? It's like, okay, but if you didn't have that, then it's like, all right, I can understand where generalizing, but generalizing in fitness is just training everyone. That's
Right.
that's what being a generalist
That is, yeah.
That's just called getting experience.
Yeah.
On the job training. That's your bachelor's degree right there. Talk to someone who's 80 years old. Talk to someone who's 20 years old. Talk to someone who's a plumber. Talk to someone who's an electrician. Talk to someone who's a stay-at-home dad. And those are going to be your clients. And then you'll get like a general idea. So the next time you have a plumber or an engineer or a stay-at-home dad, you'll be like, oh yeah, I remember Phil, the stay-at-home dad. Do you also drink Merlot at noon? Like, I don't know what you talk to these people about. That's your general thing, but then go specific. Go specific. Put yourself in a fucking hole and only allow enough daylight in to survive, whatever that metaphor is, and then just keep doing that forever. Because otherwise, you're going to be useless and you can't solve problems.
100%.
Did we do it?
We did.
Did it.
Sick.
That's it.
All right.